Hello, I'm Esther Gidoi. It's Thursday, March 30th. This is Africa 54. U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris is in Tanzania Thursday as her office announces plans to improve trade and other aspects of bilateral relations between the Export-Import Bank of the United States and the government of Tanzania. We'll have live reports from Dar es Salaam. Vice President Kamala Harris' visit to Zambia Friday has elicited excitement among some Zambians and nostalgia for Harris, who spent time there as a young girl. We'll bring you a report from Lusaka. An anti-government protesters set tires ablaze in Kenya's capital, Nairobi, and the western city of Kisumu on Thursday in a third round of demonstrations organized by opponents of President William Ruto. This and much more coming up on today's Africa 54. U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris is in Tanzania on Thursday as the United States deepens its outreach to Africa. The Vice President hailed Tanzanian President Samia Suluhu Hassan as a standard-bearer of democracy on the latest leg of her landmark trip to Africa. Harris, the first black person and first woman to be elected U.S. Vice President, spoke alongside Hassan, Tanzania's first female president, who has been rolling back the authoritarian policies of her late predecessor, John Magufuli. Harris arrived in Tanzania late Wednesday after spending 3 days in Ghana. She is the latest top U.S. government official to visit Africa after Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen and Secretary of State Antony Blinken, as Washington strives to counterbalance growing Chinese and Russian influence on the continent. Harris was warmly greeted at the airport in Dar es Salaam with music and dancing as she walked down a red carpet that was rolled out to Air Force Two. Harris and President Hassan spoke earlier.
Madam President, under your leadership, Tanzania has taken important and meaningful steps. And President Joe Biden and I applaud you.
Thank you.
You have been open to working with the political opposition. We have discussed that. You have lifted the ban on political party public rallies. You worked to improve the freedom of the press. And just yesterday, you participated, as you mentioned, in the Summit for Democracy. On the subject of economic growth, good governance delivers predictability, stability, and rule of law, which businesses need to invest.
After spending 2 nights in Tanzania, Vice President Harris concludes her week-long trip with a stop in Zambia, another country that is striving to strengthen its democracy. She plans to return to Washington on Sunday. Among the items for Harris to discuss with Hassan during her visit to the East African country is democracy, good governance, long-term economic growth, and the climate crisis during her visit to the East African country. For more insight on the U.S. U.S. Vice President's visit to Tanzania, let's go live now via Skype to VOA White House correspondent Anita Powell, who is traveling with Harris in Tanzania. Hello, Anita.
Hello.
Give us some highlights on Vice President Harris' key speech, key issues that she addressed in Tanzania today.
Well, where do I begin? She and President Samia Suluhu Hassan have a number of issues, including development, democracy, as you heard, investment. They inked some deals and partnerships. And Harris reminded the president that the U.S. will be giving $560 million in bilateral assistance to Tanzania next year. So they covered a range of issues. One that didn't really come up very much in their public statements was the war in Ukraine. Both of them alluded to it and talked about the food insecurity that has resulted from it, but they didn't go any further in making any commitments one way or the other on where Tanzania is going to stand going forward on this conflict.
Anita, what more do we know from what we had from Kamala Harris's office announcing, that the Exim Bank of the United States will have more relations, more bilateral, kind of collaborations with Tanzania?
Right. So this is a memorandum of understanding that was inked today. It's worth $500 million. And this is going to allow U.S. companies to, it's going to give them export financing in the areas of infrastructure, transport, climate security, and energy security, and more. These are, big ticket kind of, I hesitate to say it, but, nuts and bolts items, kind of boring items for most citizens, but they will see the effects, hopefully, one hope, in the form of, stable electricity development, digital technology development, and so on and so forth. So this is a big deal, and it's a big commitment. And it's one that, it's quite complicated, but will result, hopefully, in an improvement in people's day-to-day lives.
Anita, you probably spoke to a few women there. This is the second time that Vice President Kamala Harris is sharing a platform with President Samia Suluhu Hassan. What was the excitement like in Dar es Salaam today?
I had the opportunity to talk to women who had waited for hours at State House and also the night before at the airport for the Vice President's arrival. And they said, it's just such a great thing to see two women leaders together talking. And, we talked a little bit about some of the biases against women, about how, people discredit women and discount women's ability to lead. And this generation, these mid-20-year-olds that I spoke to, said, we don't know why this is the case, and we believe women can lead. And I think that's an interesting and important norm change that we're seeing here on the continent and also around the world.
Anita, now there's excitement building in Zambia, where you guys are going to be heading next. And we understand there's a historical connection for the Vice President in Lusaka. What are you anticipating when you get there tomorrow?
I don't want to get ahead of the Vice President here, but her grandfather was posted to Zambia in the 1960s as an official with the Indian government. He worked with the first post-independence president. There is a possibility that they might be able to find the house that he lived in and pay a visit there. This is the house that Vice President Kamala Harris visited when she was a very young girl in the 1960s. This is sure to be an emotional moment for the Vice President, because this is her family, and her grandfather she cites as a big influence on her. But we don't have that in the program just yet. So far, we just have her meeting with the President of Zambia and holding a bilateral and a press conference and meeting with some entrepreneurs and so on and so forth. But that is the hope, that she might get to revisit that part of her history.
I see a similar thing that happened in Ghana. Women were really excited about being empowered, the women entrepreneurs. I kind of think that is going to continue as you head to Zambia, Anita. All right, Anita, thank you so much. Right. All right, Anita, VOA White House correspondent Anita Powell reporting live for us from Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. For more perspective on the welcome of Kamala Harris to Tanzania, let's go to correspondent Christina Coroso with Azam TV in Dar es Salaam. Good evening, Christina.
Good evening, Esther. How are you?
Good. We spoke yesterday that this platform is going to be shared by two powerful women, the first woman president in Tanzania and Vice President Kamala Harris. How did things turn out? How was she received in Dar?
Warmly, and of course with a lot of positive energy between the two leaders. It was really wonderful to see the mutual understanding and respect that they shared today as they were addressing the press of Tanzania and speaking to the Tanzanian people. So I believe it was really positive.
Christina, some Tanzanians were very eager to hear some issues regarding democracy, human rights issues. We know the opposition, of course, is excited now. This is not the era of John Pombe Magufuli. It's a new era. What are some of the key issues that you heard during her speech?
Absolutely, and it was refreshing to hear Vice President Kamala Harris applauding our president for maintaining democracy and allowing her opposition parties to have freedom, of speech and also to exercise their rights as citizens of Tanzania. It was really awesome to hear those positive words, because us as Tanzanians, we see certain things and take them lightly, but hearing from another powerful leader of the world, it's really positive, and it shows that our country is heading in the right direction in terms of democracy.
What was the reaction of the opposition in Tanzania? Things have changed, as you say, the air has changed. What was their reaction?
Their reaction was very positive, and I think it has given them strength. They believe that now they can be able to share their views in terms of how they wish the country of Tanzania to be led. So the positive reaction from the opposition parties.
Christina, how did you, as media organizations in Tanzania, cover this historic visit?
Well, I would say all the media houses in Tanzania were focusing on today being the first address from our president, Dr. Samia Suluhu Hassan, and her guest, Vice President of the United States of America, Kamala Harris. So everybody was paying attention to what was going to be discussed. And if, of course, you've seen our President Samia Suluhu Hassan presenting to the Vice President of the United States of America her wishes in regards to her visit in Tanzania and her wishes in the partnership of the two nations. And of course, we also heard the Vice President, Kamala Harris, also accepting every word that came from our president, and also applauding our president for great leadership in the country. So every media house in Tanzania is speaking the same language today.
Christina, briefly, what do you think Tanzanians will remember most about Kamala Harris' visit to the country?
I think I believe her sharing the stage with the first woman or female president of Tanzania or Eastern Africa, and of course the historic moment of the two powerful women sharing the stage, her being the first Black woman Vice President of the United States of America, and of course giving a positive response to the request that our president made or presented before her, of course representing the United States of America. I think that is a memorable moment for Tanzanians.
Christina, very well said. I am sure the women of Tanzania are extremely happy. The young girls have seen role models, and thank you so much, Christina, for your reporting.
Thank you so much, Esther.
Christina Coroso is a correspondent with Azam Television in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. Let's hear from Tanzanian citizens on how they feel about Harris visiting their country.
Kwa maono yangu, ziara ya makamu wa rais wa Marekani.
In my opinion, the visit of the Vice President of the United States can bring benefits to the country. I've heard that she's coming for economic and trade issues in Africa. I think it will be an opportunity for Tanzania and Africa as a whole.
Personally, it is a happy thing for Tanzanians because the visit of the Vice President from the United States will be a great opportunity for Tanzanians. For a great leader like her to visit Tanzania, it is really good to visit countries like ours. So Tanzanians should be ready to receive the blessings brought by the Vice President through this visit.
In Tanzania, we have a saying that goes, a guest should come and the host should be healed. But due to the challenges of our Tanzania, I do not think that this trip will be successful.
Tanzanian citizens expressing their views on the U.S. Vice President visiting the East African country. Vice President Harris visits Zambia on Friday, and the excitement is rising, and so is the nostalgia. Harris has a personal connection to the country. Harris spent time there with her Indian grandfather, who sparked her interest in public service. Kathy Short reports from Lusaka.
Kamala Harris becomes the first female U.S. Vice President to visit Zambia, a stop that rekindles many memories here. Harris spent time in Lusaka as a child, visiting her maternal grandfather. Retired senior Zambian diplomat Leslie Mbola says the fact that Harris was born in 1964, 4 days before Zambia got its independence from Britain, makes her even more special.
That visit to Zambia is very valuable to us because it's going to put a stamp, first as a child, now as vice president, on the relationship between Zambia and ourselves. And in the process, of course, between the United States and Zambia.
Harris' grandfather, Painganadu Venkataraman Gopalan, worked as a diplomat in Lusaka, helping refugees from then Rhodesia, now Zimbabwe. He later worked as an advisor to Zambia's founding president, Kenneth Kaunda. Until his passing in 1998, Gopalan remained a guiding light in Harris' life, imparting values of civic-mindedness, public service, and human rights.
He was a great man. He came to assist the refugees that were coming from Rhodesia, and he played a great role in that.
For Tasila Mbewe, a lecturer in politics and governance at the University of Lusaka, Harris is a great role model, especially for girls and women.
It's really exciting to see somebody with that status actually visiting Zambia and knowing the fact that she has some roots here. She's lived here before.
U.S. Ambassador to Zambia, Michael Gonzalez, says Harris' visit is a great deal for both countries.
Since being the vice president, she's interacted on a sustained cadence with President Hichilema. And so this is just the next step of their personal relationship that shows that partnership between the American government and the government of Zambia.
Zambia's Justice Minister Mulambo Haimbe says the entire government is ecstatic about Harris' visit to Zambia.
As we say in the African sense and African culture, our daughter is coming back home. So we look at that from the sentimental side of things to start with. But also, I think it underscores the bilateral relations between the US and Zambia.
Zambia and the United States have enjoyed close bilateral relations since 1964, with Washington providing more than $500 million aid annually to support poverty alleviation, climate change, and health. Kathy Short for VOA News, Lusaka, Zambia.
We're excited to hear what you think about Africa 54 and all our VOA Africa programs on our website at voaafrica.com. Still to come, anti-government protests erupt in Kenya over the rising costs of living. We'll be right back.
Baobab, moringa, and hibiscus are some of the main ingredients of many of the plant-based dishes on the African continent. And in the recent trends in the West of vegetarian lifestyle that focuses primarily on eating little to no meat came to no surprise to many on the continent, especially for women who are changing their eating habits to include African superfoods to resolve some of their health concerns. On the next episode of Our Voices, we'll discuss how women in the diaspora are embracing the Afro-veganism lifestyle and introduce you to some of the nutritionists who will share with you some tips and benefits of plant-based diets. Join the conversation each week right here on Our Voices.
In other news, the Vatican says Pope Francis is in the hospital and is likely to be there for several days for treatment of a respiratory infection after experiencing difficulty breathing in recent days. Events for the Pontiff 86 have been cancelled through Friday, raising questions about his participation during the Vatican's Holy Week activities starting on Sunday. Authorities say the death toll from Cyclone Freddy in Malawi is slated to surpass 1,200, as hundreds of missing people are expected to be declared dead as hopes of finding survivors fade. At least 676 people have been killed and 538 are still missing, according to authorities. And Sudanese President South Sudan President Salva Kiir has appointed a member of his own party as defense minister, according to a decree read on state media. The move breaches a peace deal in which the role should be selected by the party of opposition leader Riek Machar. Kiir selected Chol Thon Balok, a former governor of Upper Nile State. Now to East Africa, where despite calls for the international community and religious leaders to remain calm, sporadic violence erupted in Kenya on Thursday, the third day of opposition demonstrations to protest against the government and the rising cost of living. Dozens of people in congested Nairobi and Kisumu neighborhoods engaged police in running battles, throwing rocks and burning tires, while officers responded with tear gas. Opposition leader Raila Odinga has called for protests every Monday and Thursday as he accuses President William Ruto of stealing last year's election and failing to control the surging cost of living. Protesting has been declared illegal by the government, but have turned violent on previous days. The government says so far 2 civilians have been killed and 51 police officers and 85 civilians injured. Fred Omulo has more from Kisumu.
Kenyans are just speaking and saying with one voice, let sanity come back to our economy, to our politics. The kind of political language we are experiencing from those who call themselves government, especially from the deputy president, is very poisonous to us. The state is nation. That is not the nation of Kenya. Always young. Let's not commercialize and tribalize the church. Because when we lose that, this country will not have to stand for them. Let's come out and protect the interest of our nation. Let us secure the future for our children. Let us secure this nation.
As the new supporters, we have 3 demands. They're very clear. Cost of living, server to be open, and IBC to stop. That previous process must be stopped.
Despite the immense disruptions that these protests have brought across the country, opposition leader Raila Odinga maintains that he will press on until his demands are met. These demands are stabilization of the economy, an audit of last year's presidential elections, and reconstitution, a collaboration in the reconstitution of the Electoral Commission. The government has dismissed these demands as baseless and maintains that they will keep law and order, protect lives and property through all means possible. Fred Omulo, VOA News.
March is Women History Month, where we highlight women who are breaking barriers. And joining me live from Atlanta, Georgia is Tariro Kandemiri, a 26-year-old Zimbabwean American and a sports reporter with ESPN, a lacrosse figure and entrepreneur. Tariro, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you so much for having me, Esther.
Tari, you're only 26 and you're already an ESPN sports reporter. You've already broken certain barriers. How did that happen?
Sure. So I started playing lacrosse in high school when I was 14 and just developed a passion for the game. I loved it so much. I was writing about it, tweeting, Instagram, all over social media. And that caught the attention of ESPN. And, you know, they just reached out and invited me to join their network to talk more about the game and really expand the passion and coverage for women's lacrosse.
So you've been reporting. How many times are you on air with ESPN? And what do you look at, you know, when you're going out to do sports reporting?
Of course, yeah. So I'm on multiple times a week at Sound On with Tari and Amari during halftime of those games. We interview key players. We interview coaches. Here I'm talking at the national championship, covering the most exciting game, the highest rated women's lacrosse game that year. So my goal with ESPN is to really expand and introduce the game to more people, show how exciting it is, how much fun it is to play, and highlight, you know, just the strengths that the game has.
I don't know how old you were when, you know, you were born in Zimbabwe before you came here. I don't know, you know, I don't see much of lacrosse in Africa. So you are a figure for this game. What does it take to get there?
Sure. I think it takes really passion, the passion that I have, authenticity, covering the game from my own angle, not trying to be like any other reporter out there. I try to build relationships with the players, you know, showcase to them that I'm not here to ask any questions that'll throw them off, but really help them share their message, their story, and then inspire other young players.
You've been hosting some events where you talk to young girls and women. What do you think is the #1 thing they want to hear?
Sure. I think it's important to affirm, the young women that are in attendance about their goals and let them know that there's nothing too big out there, nothing that's impossible. And even if other people around them aren't necessarily doing the things that they enjoy, it's okay to have your own interests. I recently met with a team of high schoolers and I talked to them about my passion for lacrosse and how, no one in my family was playing at the time, but I just continued working hard, making sure I was the best I could be and sharing my passion. And now I'm on ESPN, I'm signed with Nike, I'm doing all these amazing things. So it's important to just highlight that your passion makes you strong and, follow your passion, follow your dreams.
Now, moving on to Hama Beauty, I understand this was born out of during the COVID when people weren't going places. What led to you becoming an entrepreneur and what's Hama Beauty all about?
Sure. So I studied computer science in undergrad as well as business, and having played lacrosse and field hockey my whole life, I realized I had some dark spots on my face and on my skin. And so I wanted to find the best products for my skin, but there's over 1,000 products that all promise to do the same thing. So it was very overwhelming for me. And I realized with my background in data that I could use the data out there that's available on products, the reviews, the ratings, any kind of specific call outs for those products to recommend the best product for me as a young Black woman with, this skin tone that I have, the skin type that I have. And then I expanded that. So hamabeauty.com gives recommendations for people of any skin tone, skin type, or age, and any need that they have.
So it came out of what, hyperpigmentation, something like that?
Hyperpigmentation, exactly. Dark spots on areas on my face.
All right. So what's next for you? What's your next goal?
Yes, my next goal is to continue improving and growing the Hama Beauty platform using, artificial intelligence, computer vision, really exciting emerging technologies to make it easier and better to do shopping online and in stores as well. And then continuing to grow as a lacrosse analyst, as a player, as a host. I feel really lucky to have my platform. I want other young women, especially Black women, women of color, to be able to turn on the game and see people that look like them and that'll inspire them, that next generation can reach what I've done and also surpass me as well.
Tariro, what would be your message for girls out there in the continent of Africa where you were born? How do you inspire them?
Sure. I would say, utilize the social media networks that we have today to grow your dream. If you want to be a fashion designer, a sports analyst, a writer, use those networks out there to publish your work because you never know who's going to see it. I had no idea ESPN was following or watching what I was doing, but all of a sudden they invited me to be part of their family. So it's a great chance to showcase your designs, your writing, your music with the whole wide world and expand your network.
Tari, thank you very much.
Of course. Thank you, Esther.
Tariro Kandemiri is a 26-year-old Zimbabwean American, a sports reporter with ESPN, a lacrosse figure, and entrepreneur. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, thank you for watching.